Unforgettable. That's what you are. Unforgettable. Though near or far.
My name is Richard Foster Gordon.
My name is Claudine Burtonshaw Gordon.
I was born on May 4th, 1939, in a beautiful little house in Fillmore, Utah, that is now known as the Huntsman Hotel. You know that I was born in Fillmore as the third child of the family. I have an older brother and sister and a younger brother and sister. My older sister is Dixie, and she's 4 years older. And then my older brother is Dennis, he's 2 years older. And Sandra is 5 years younger, and Larry is 8 years younger. So we five were accumulated along the way. Mom and Dad were both from Cache Valley, were married in the Salt Lake Temple, went back to Cache Valley, and then lived there where Dixie and Dennis were born, and I was born in Fillmore. Later, Sandra was born in Ephraim, and Larry was born in Brigham, where we spent most of our childhood. My name Richard is probably after my uncle Richard, known as Uncle Dick, and so I was quickly tabbed Dick. I was born at 10.5 pounds, good size these days. My mother had all big children, and 21 inches. I was a healthy, happy baby, and I grew up my first 4 years there in Fillmore. And then we moved to Ephraim, where Dad taught us no college. Dad had been teaching in Fillmore at the high school, FFA coach and the wrestling coach. Then to Fillmore for a couple of years, to Ephraim for a couple of years, where I went to first grade, and then to Brigham City, where I grew up thereafter.
I was named Claudine because my father's Claude, and I was the #1 child of 8 children. I was born on May 20th, 1943, in the Idaho Falls Hospital, and I weighed 7.5 pounds, and I was bald until I was over 1, but I had big blue eyes, and I guess I was the star of the show because I was the only baby in the house. My mother was a teacher at the high school there. My father was away in World War II. He was a cryptographer, and he didn't get to see me for about 2.5 years, but he didn't even find out that he had a baby girl for 3 months after I was born. I lived in Shelling, mostly with my grandma and grandpa, in my grandmother Davis's home. She was my Nana, and she was a storyteller, and she was a writer of stories, and I think I take after her with my hair and with the things that I love to do a lot. My mother's a big influence too. While she was teaching, however, my grandma took care of me. And when my father got home from the war 2.5 years later, he came in to see me. He held out his arms to me, and everyone said, "This is your daddy." And I go, "No, not my daddy." And I ran over to the piano where my dad's picture was sitting there in his army uniform, and I took it down and I said, "This my daddy." Well, it didn't take long before we moved to Rexburg, Idaho, and Daddy became a special friend to me.
My childhood years were quite idyllic. Fillmore was a wonderful place to live. It was the original state capital of Utah, but there we had wonderful friends. My mom and dad would go with their friends for a big night out, and they'd have bread and milk, put jam into the bowl. I still remember that was a big treat for us. Because I had an older brother and sister, I got to do a lot of fun things. And we moved to a different home after a year or two. So I remember living in another home on the east side of Main Street. And we would go down to Swallow's Market where we would buy penny candy, which was always such a delight. When our dad came home from teaching at high school, he would drive his big black Studebaker up the road, and suddenly all the children in the neighborhood would burst out from behind the bushes and would run and leap on the car, and everybody would leap on and hang on while he would go the last 100 feet at very slow speed so that everybody could safely survive till we got to the house. We lived there until I was age 4, and then Dad took a job teaching at Snow College, where he began the college farm and taught agriculture. So I went to the first grade in Ephraim. While we were there, Sandra was born, and I have dear friends from there still to this day. And later I went back there to play football at Snow College. We moved to Brigham City, which was a big city, 5,000 people. And we thought that was huge. It was the 5th biggest city in Utah at the time. But it was a perfect place to grow up. We had friends everywhere. We had 2 stakes in town, and it was just a wonderful time. Everybody had a bicycle. We were free to go. Everybody would go outside in the morning and never return until dark at night. And we knew that we had to come home at dark, but other than that, we were pretty much on our own. The school years were wonderful. The old Bushnell Hospital, which was a World War II Army hospital, and after the war, they converted it into a school for Indian students from all over the country. And some of the buildings were empty, so we went down there for 1 year for school because our school burned down. Then the next year, I went back to Lincoln School, where I'd had 2nd grade as well. And then finally, my 6th grade year, we went to Central School, the new elementary. And I just loved all those years because I had friends from both sides of town, and we had the 2 elementaries. Such delightful times because Dad was the teacher for the FFA and the wrestling team, and so he knew all the people in the whole part of the county, and we would travel around and meet these people. Pepsi-Cola one summer sponsored a big competition. My brother Dennis came home and announced it to us that he'd found out that inside of the Pepsi-Cola bottle caps was a map of each state. And the first people who got a map of all 48 states, there were just 48 states then, the first person who could get all 48 bottle caps would win a new Harley Davidson motorcycle. Started searching the town for bottle caps. Well, pretty soon we were up to 20, and then 30, and then 40. Getting those last 8 was just a nightmare. Finally we got to 47, but we still had 1 left. We didn't have Rhode Island, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And we went all summer long searching everywhere in town for this other extra bottle cap. And one day we went to a bottling plant, and there we found somebody had taken a cap and nailed it on the wall, and we took it off, and that was Rhode Island. We were thrilled. We were the winners. We got all of our caps together, laid them all out, had all 48 of them, and then we looked at each other and said, now what do we do? Who do we give these bottle caps to? And he said, what are you talking about? We said, you know, the big contest test for the motorcycle. He said, I've never heard anything about it. So we ran to the next place and asked them, and they said they'd never heard about it. So we went all over town and asked everybody. Nobody had ever heard about it. How Dennis had ever gotten this story, we don't know, but we had spent the whole summer collecting these bottle caps, and we were the winners. My father was the ag teacher. He wanted to be a farmer, but my mom didn't want to marry a farmer. So they compromised. We lived in the city, but we had a farm on the outside of the city. So I grew up working in all kinds of agriculture. When I was 10 years old, we would have someone come by in a pickup and pick up all the kids in the neighborhood at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we would drive out and we would thin beets all day long. And we were so proud of ourselves because we'd be earning $5 a day. We raised cows and horses and pigs and chickens and sheep, and we were good at it. I had chickens when I was little, and I got paid a nickel for every egg. We'd have milk cows every morning before school and every night after football. And that was just part of our life, 7 days a week. So you learn to be very disciplined in what you have to do.
I'm going going back to where my father scooped us up and took us to Rexburg, Idaho, so he could finish his education, and then he became a professor there. I had 7 siblings born. And so when I thought I was going to be an only child, I just kind of got snubbed a little bit with all 7 siblings that came into the little town of Rexburg. I loved Rexburg. And like Papa said, to be a part of a small town is a real joy because you get to do so many things. And they always ask you to do everything. And so we did everything. And when I was in first grade, I was the best reader. So we made a little play where all the first graders did a rolling where they made pictures of a story, and I was the narrator. And I stood up there and narrated while they turned the moving picture that all the children had put together. Well, Mrs. Clark was my teacher. She was my very favorite friend. And when we got married, Mrs. Clark embroidered us a tablecloth. And from then on, I loved school. And I especially loved the arts and speech and English and literature and poetry and all those things. When I was in 6th grade, I was elected publicity chairman. But they said, we don't have enough room in the school for you. So they put us on a bus and sent us out to Hibbard, which is a town outside of Rexburg. And there we were kind of king and queen of that school. And the principal liked me. He would put me in charge of the class. And everybody thought that was a hoot to have me be in charge of them. My grandpa Davis said to me, Claudine, I want you to be a virtuous young woman. So if you will wait to be kissed till you are 16, I will give you $5. Well, now $5 isn't a lot of money, not even then. But it was a little goal that I could set for myself. So in 6th grade, we always played boys chase the girls. And if you got caught, the boys would kiss you. Well, I had this big thing. I couldn't be kissed till I was 16. So I would outrun every single boy. Not one boy caught me. I had fast little legs. And I could run any of them because my grandpa made me promise I would never kiss or let myself be kissed until I was 16. I remember skating on a frozen canal in the winter, and we would warm up in Grandpa Burtonshaw's little machinery shop that he had there, and we would drink hot chocolate, and we would find little places around the frozen branches of the canal that we'd played hide and seek. Most exciting of all was we had a store on the corner of our house. And there in that store, I could buy penny candy. That was my favorite reward. If I got my work done, I'd be paid an allowance, and we'd run to the store and buy penny candy and lollipops and licorice and ice cream. Now my favorite ice cream was dreamsicles. And one day I found a dollar, and I thought, do you know how many dreamsicles I could buy with $1? Because they were only 10 cents. I went and bought 10, and I put them in a little sack, and then I went and hid under the lilac bush. And while I was there, I started to eat my dreamsicles. It was just heaven on the first one, and the second, and the third, and the fourth. It was getting a little soggy, and I almost couldn't get through it. And the fifth, all I had was a puddle of dreamsicles. Oh, I felt so bad. You know what I could have done? I could have got my brothers and sisters or my friends that lived in the neighborhood, and we could have all had one and loved it. I learned an important lesson right then.
The big event of our 6th grade was the 6th grade reception where they welcomed us into junior high. It was a major event. The kids all got dates to go to the 6th grade reception. We all walked together. You started getting your dates in the 4th grade. And by the time you got to the 5th grade, you didn't like the girl anymore, so that broke off, so you got another date to the 6th grade reception. And the night that we finally went, I took our neighbor up the street, Dixie Gunderson, same name as my sister. And we went with about 40 other kids. We all walked together as a group, boys on one side of the street, girls on the other. A romantic evening. Our junior high was at the high school. They had a part of the high school down at the lower level where the junior high was held. So we actually went to that building for 6 years. And I had wonderful teachers in the 6th grade. And I found that my abilities increased gradually as I caught on to the system. I've often thought this is important for kids to know, that I think I was pretty much a B student my 7th grade, and then an A- student in the 8th grade, and then after that I was an A student all through high school. I think during those years I learned how to study and how to learn. But it was a wonderful time. I had a great 7th grade, all my friends. We were baseball players. That was our big sport as kids in Brigham because we didn't have organized teams of anything else except baseball. So we played every summer, and I was chosen the most promising, most valuable player, I guess. And Bill Jensen, my buddy, was chosen the most promising, and he eventually played in the minor league baseball, even at the pros, for a couple of years. So we had good baseball, and eventually in high school we won the state championship. Loved theater and drama. I used to go around town and give readings and took part in the little plays. And in the 5th grade I had written some plays that the teacher let me put on, so we'd get all the kids in the class involved and do that. So in the 7th grade I became involved in the theater and such, and I got enough activity that I became well known, and so I was chosen student body president for the 8th grade for the junior high, which was great fun. My girlfriend, Linda Schertz, was the vice president. We had a wonderful time that year as junior high students. We also did lots of odd jobs. One of the things I did was paint buildings, which is something I decided I didn't want to do for a living. Painting is a lot of work. Another thing I did was we sprayed for mosquitoes. The county had an abatement program, so a guy picked me up in a truck and we would drive all over the county, and I'd just go spray all around the houses and the yards. And that's another job you don't want to do for a living because the smell is terrible, and I'm sure it wasn't healthy, because we didn't ever wear masks or anything to protect ourselves. And so, you just learned a lot of things you want to do. I worked in the clothing stores. We had 2 really nice men's clothing stores there in Brigham City, Zundels and Blocks, and I worked in both of them, selling clothes, and learned a whole lot about it. My mom was talented in colors and clothing, and she got a job there, and pretty soon they made her the buyer, and so she was the buyer for the whole chain of Block stores, which was headquartered in Pocatello. And she had such wonderful taste in clothing and colors that she trained us a lot. So I started buying women's clothes for my wife, and ever since I buy most of her clothes. After baseball, it would be time for the daily swim. At the high school they had a swimming pool, but you had to be there by a certain time or you couldn't get in. They'd lock the doors. Well, it happened that baseball always conflicted, so we'd play baseball, and then it was time for the swim. But the doors were locked, and so we boys all learned how to climb the sides of the brick building, climb through the window. It was one of those windows that you had to pull out, then you climb through it and slide down into the building. And everybody go, and then of course you'd go running into the pool in your suit like you'd already been there. You'd get in the shower and get all wet, and then run in. And the people watching the pool never knew who was there. And scouting was a big part of our life. Our father was also our scoutmaster. And we had a big scout troop, so we went scouting all the time. I became an Eagle Scout when I was just turned 14. And loved scouting, and my brother and my father and I all got our Eagle Scouts awards the same night. Teacher at school. The other year she was our FFA teacher. So I was a state farmer, so was Dennis, and that's when I did a public speaking in the state, public speaking in the FFA, and I won the state 3 times. And the 3rd time that I went to the national competition was when I was a senior, a junior, and it wasn't around for the elections that I mentioned earlier. High school are probably the most memorable years of your whole life. They only last for 4 years, at least in our school, it was 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. But it seems like it's a major part of all your memories. Your friends are so special, you do so many things. So football was our favorite sport as high schoolers. Box Elder had a great history of football, so I loved and lived football. Every night when I would go down to milk the cows, I would practice football. Dennis and I would go over there and we'd throw the football to each other and then tackle each other into the pile of straw. And we did that every night. While we were young, we went up and watched the football team work out at nights on the football field, and the coaches would let us come in and fill in where they needed an extra man, and so they knew us from the time we were 5th and 6th graders right on through high school, so they all knew who the Gordon boys were. By the time I got to 9th grade, we were playing freshman football and then sophomore, and then the last 2 years I lettered. I was one of only 5 football players my age that lettered the junior year and senior year, and we did well, and I played well enough in football that I got a scholarship to go to college, and that's when I went to Snow College to play football. Baseball was our spring sport, and we loved it, and we did well, and like I said, basketball was our winter sport, and we lived for that. And I was really quick, so my hands were always out stealing the ball. I got a lot of fouls, but I got a lot of steals too. And basketball, we were never very tall, so the Gordon curse, we weren't the giants. I used to tell my children I was 6'6". I always thought they knew I was kidding, but they didn't seem to know that later. They said, "Dad, you told us you were 6'6". And that wasn't so. So I was never tall. When I graduated from high school, I was 137 pounds. So I played college football at 145. And high school, I did a lot of things. I was in all the activities, all the plays, the dramas. I had a lead in the school play each year. I played Merlin the Magician. I loved theater, and I always thought I wanted to go into theater, but my dad said, "Why don't you do that for a hobby?" I said, "I think I want to be a coach, Dad." "Well, why don't you do that for a hobby? Why don't you use your interest in public speaking and writing and so on and become a lawyer?" And so I became a lawyer. I think a lot of that goes right back to my dad's influence. In high school, I was in speech and drama, and we loved going around to the different high schools for the competitions, and we had the state competition and the poetry contest at Utah State. The drama was at BYU, and the public speaking was at the U. So we got to go to all these competitions, which was great fun. Went to the Model United Nations in Salt Lake, and we represented the country of Austria, and got to stay at the home of O.C. Tanner, the famous O.C. Tanner jewelry line, and we stayed at his home. And he was a big advocate for the United Nations, and so after that I was always an advocate. I loved learning, and so I was a good student, and I graduated as the number 2 boy in my class. I ran for student body president, and my best buddy, Stuart Reeves, beat me. So I was second, and I was away at the state FFA, at the national FFA speaking competition. I had won the state of Utah. So I was up speaking at that national competition when they elected the class officer, so I didn't even get nominated. I was away. So I came back and was elected president of the FFA, which turned out to be a lot of fun and great activity. We had lots of fun with the girls. We dated a lot, went to all the social things, and had lots of girlfriends that were great friends all the rest of my life. And a couple of years ago, I was the class chairman for the reunion, our 60th high school reunion, if you can believe.
Junior high was exciting because we ran the school pretty much. We were I just remember mostly the 9th grade because that's when you're top. And we had a big dance coming up, and I looked at all the boys in my school, and I thought, there's not one of them I want to go with. And Mother said, you know, Fred Mason and Marcia Mason up there in Idaho Falls, they had a handsome young man by the name of John. I'm sure he would come down and come to your big 9th grade formal and go with you. All right, I said. So John was my date, and he brought Joe, and Joe dated my best friend, Lynette Piper. And off we went to this dance. I thought we were the coolest of all. Everybody looked at us and said, where did these handsome boys come from? And we said, the big city of Idaho Falls. One of the things that I enjoyed most was my science class. I had a science teacher that didn't have one arm, and he was so good. He taught us about the wonders of the world of biology and geology and physiology and psychology all in one big ball. I started Madison High School my sophomore year. I loved typing because I could win all those fast contests, typing fast. I also played a flute in the band, and we had trips. I loved going to Arizona with our band and playing, marching in a band, playing my flute. And I had a huge group of friends. I had about 10. And we had a big circle of friends, and we were close. I just remember one time laying out on the big grass at Elaine Agron's house, and all our sleeping bags just lined up one by one, and we looked at the stars, and we all shared our dreams and things we were going to do with our future. We loved being together. And I went home that night. I think that was my birthday party, actually. I went home that night, and my dad said, well, I've accepted a new job. I said, where? And he said, in Price, Utah. Oh, all of us moaned and groaned. Where is Price, Utah? We're not even in Idaho. I'll miss Idaho. How can I possibly live in Utah? So we all bundled up everything to say farewell to Rick's, because they had learned to love my father. He was a great singer, and he and Ruth Melville would sing duets everywhere around in the college and the community. So then we moved to Price, Utah. Never had there been a bigger shock in my life, and probably the lives of my younger brothers and sisters. We lived, it's like a desert, and all the children there had fathers that worked in the coal mines there, and they came from every country. At first I thought, this is the strangest place, because I had left a town that was 99% LDS, and down here it was only 40 to 50%. And the first day of school I walk in, and I got a cute dress on. It's gray and pink, kind of checkered, down, and it had a cute empress, like up here, and some puffies, cotton sleeves. And I walked in, and I couldn't find my room. And so by the time I got there was only one seat left, and it was on the front row. Oh, I was so embarrassed. I looked around, and I heard people talking about me, and they were whispering, and I looked around, and all the girls had tight skirts on and tight sweaters. I was just sick. I was so poorly dressed for this community that I went home and died. And I thought, I've got to go back to Rexburg and live. I can't live here. Friday night, we're having a dance. Would you like to go? And I said, oh, yes, I'd love to. So we get ready and go. And I thought, it'll be just like Rexburg. Nobody will ask me to dance. Just watch. And sure enough, when I get there, someone comes right over. and asked me to dance. And his name was Brent Jensen. And because Brent asked me to dance, I was accepted in the community, because if Brent likes her, I guess we can all like her. So that was a good thing. So Brent and I dated almost all that year, because he was a senior now and I was a junior. Well, he went off to join the Army, and so from then on I dated college guys and guys who were leaving on missions, and I just sent them off one by one by one. I think I sent off 5, and each time they'd say, well, will you be here when I get back? And I said, oh, sure, I'm not going anywhere. And so I enjoyed a big dating scene, and we always double dated or had group dates. It was just a fun time. At the end of our street, when it dragged Main, a place you could buy curly fries. And they were the best curly fries. I don't even know if they have them anymore, but they were wonderful. So we would get a cherry 7-Up, and then we'd take our cherry 7-Up and go down and buy the fries. They were so wonderful. We thought we'd died and gone to heaven. Anyway, one of the dates that we did there, because there wasn't a lot to do there in Price, was go see the lights. And all these carloads of kids would go out and see the lights. So you'd go out there, and the boys would make it spooky. You know, they said, here they come, here they come. Who do you think it is? And all of us would scream and run, and it was just a funny thing. So everybody would say, you want to go see the lights? Yeah, we want to go see the lights. Oh, and we also had one of those big screen theaters. You could go there. And that was kind of a cool thing too, because all your friends would be there in cars and trucks. And this was such a great thing. Well, while I was in high school, another break came to me. I tried out for the play my junior year, and I got the starring role in 10 Little Indians. At the end, there I was on the stage, and the hero was supposed to kiss me. Well, I wasn't quite 16 yet, and I thought, oh, I can't do that. I went to the director and said, I can't kiss him. And he said, you're an actress. You don't have to want to kiss him or like to kiss him, but you must kiss him. This is the way this ends. And I said, I can't, I just can't. So I said, okay, I'll do it. My mother talked me into it. She was a full actress. She had done this many times, I'm sure. So at the very end, and I would kiss him even in the dress rehearsal. At the very end, he wraps his arms around me, and he had told the guy who was pulling the curtain not to pull it for a while. Like, you know, maybe a minute or something. And so I had to kiss him, and I was talking through my teeth saying, when are they going to pull that darn curtain? Are they ever going to pull that darn curtain? It was just a hard thing for me. But we had to kiss about 4 times every time the show was on. I was on the debate team. And the debate team was really fun. We went on trips. I was in speech contests in different universities. It was a wonderful thing. The church was right across from the college, and because my dad was the president, he changed Carbon College to the College of Eastern Utah. It's different now. It's part of Utah State. So all of the eastern part of Utah was supposed to be encouraged to go to Carbon College. One of the things that I liked the most there was geology, because we went on field trips to 9 Mile Canyon, and all of us found fossils. I loved being in Price. And I was there for about 3 years, and yeah, I guess that's right. And then I graduated, and I graduated with honors. not high honors. Honors. I had 8 siblings that would go to church, and I have a picture in my mind with me, Bonita, Bruce, Rick, Luann, Julene, Gina, Fran, all walking in a line into the front door of the church. And we all had on our best clothes, we had our hair combed, we were all put together so well. And I just remember walking in. One of the exciting things that I did when I was a senior in high school was I entered a contest, Search for a Star, and there were 5 of us throughout Utah when we came to a studio. They had us each act against a real Hollywood star. They showed me how to do the makeup and how to walk and how to dress, and it was a full 2 days. I was supposed to say, "Oh, please don't go fight those Indians," and I did it with all my passion. And when it was finished, they chose another lady that I thought was really good too. I mean, I think I was so good because I was too young, and I looked young, and she looked a little older, and she got the part. But I got a finalist in the Ensign Pictures Search for a Star. When I was in seminary, I loved seminary, and I had such a good teacher. I had a speech contest, and I won the speech contest, and I got a full scholarship to College of Eastern Utah. So my father didn't have to pay for anything. I think I would have been free anyway, but I went to Jackson Lake Lodge and worked as a maid and as a fountain waitress and as a dining room waitress. And it really is an important thing to become a dining room waitress because you start to get big tips. And so I remember one night I was given a $100 bill for my tip. And I just thought, I can now buy some clothes for college, and I can also pay for my college. I thought that was important to me.
I graduated from high school in 1957 at Box Elder High. And it's about the time we were graduating, our dad said he'd been told by one of the other teachers that the church was building a new college down in New Zealand, and that he was going to go back there and teach because he'd been a missionary there, and he loved it, and he wondered if Dad would like to do the same thing. Dad got excited about it, so he and Mom went down and were interviewed by the general authorities, and he was chosen to go down there and teach. Well, obviously, we were all thrilled. We all wanted to see the world and so on, but where in the world was New Zealand? Nobody knew where that was. And of course, there was no such thing as the internet. We didn't have an encyclopedia set, so I ran to the library and looked up New Zealand, and there was about that much written about it. It said it's a small country, the bottom of the world, 1,200 miles from Australia, where they're mostly raised sheep. And that was about all we knew. Dad's going to go down there to the college and teach, so I'll just go down there and go to college. But it wasn't until January, and so that fall, for my first year of college, we went to Snow College. So I went down there, and we had some other friends from Box Elder who went down, and we all played football at Snow College. Well, I loved Snow College in Ephraim. Small school, lots of friends. They had a most preferred man on campus, and the 5 finalists included Dennis and I. Then the night of the award, I was the second winner-up, and I got straight A's in all my classes. I thought they were the best teachers I'd ever had. Football was great fun. I loved it, but they had 7 teams. They had the equivalent of 7 full teams. They didn't even know who I was. I was just small, 145 pounds, and I played end. And in those days, you played both directions. The first week of practice, the coach said, "All right, you guys, I know the stories. In about 3 days, you're going to come to me and tell me that your dad needs you home on the farm. So if you're going to quit, just quit now. I don't want to even have to waste my time on you." Third day, these 2-a-day practices, I could hardly walk. And the 4th day, I had developed polio. I couldn't get out of bed. I screamed to my roommates, "Come and help me, I'm stuck." and they had to carry me into the shower. And after about 30 minutes of the shower, I was able to move my limbs again. But I stuck with it, and after a couple of weeks, they started to notice that I was there. About the second game, I got to play a little. The third game, I got to play a lot. And from then on, I started the rest of the season, both ways, offense and defense. And by the end of the season, the coach gave me some great compliments about if the rest of you played as hard as Gordon, we would have won all of our games. Then January came, and away we went. Our whole family, Mom and Dad and 4 children. My sister Dixie was married, so she didn't go, but she and Mel and their little girl drove with us, and we all drove out to Los Angeles. We got on this big, beautiful ship, the Mariposa, and sailed for 18 days to New Zealand. On the way, we stopped in Tahiti and had a wonderful series of experiences. And then we arrived in New Zealand, and I thought I was going down there to college. When I got there, I was amazed to discover that the college was more like a high school in British countries. And so it was a college, not a university. And so I thought, oh, what am I going to do? The mission president came up to me and said, young man, what are you going to do here? And I said, well, I thought I was going to go to college, but I just discovered it's more like a high school. I just graduated. He says, well, you've just been called on a mission. And I said, well, I'd be thrilled to go on a mission. I'm planning on a mission. I've always wanted to go on a mission, but you have to be 20, and I'm just 18. And he said, young man, I'm the mission president. I make the rules. You have been called on a mission, so be ready to go, starting tomorrow. I said, whoa, okay. And he did the same thing with my brother Dennis. Because they were running behind on building the new temple and the new college, all of our proselyting missionaries are being brought in to Temple View to live for the next 3 months. And they're all going to be working here on the temple and the college. You can be working on it, but you might as well live at home as live with the missionaries, so you can live right at home for the next 3 months as missionaries. Then you'll leave on your proselyting mission. So that's what we did. I worked in the joinery, which works with wood. And we built the wood for the temple, and I spent a lot of time in the temple and in the joinery, learning how to work with wood. It was a great experience. And my brother worked in the welding shop. At the 20th of April on 1958, President David O. McKay came down, a whole group of general authorities, and they spent a whole week in celebration with the people from all around the Pacific. Came from Tahiti, Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, Australia, New Zealand, and they each one had a whole day of celebration. And then on the 7th day, President McKay dedicated the temple, and then he went up and dedicated the college, and the next day I was set apart as a missionary, ordained an elder in the same prayer, because I was still 18. I was just about 19. And then they sent me up to Auckland to serve, and my brother down to Wellington. And there were 2 different missions. They just split the mission at that time. And so we started our missions, and I served a 2.5-year mission in the North Mission. Our parents were there in Temple View, and we got to see them several times during our mission, which we thought was wonderful. It's really wonderful, because Dad had been called, they formed a new stake that Sunday after the temple was dedicated, and Dad was called to the First High Council, and he was called as the young men's president for the stake. And Mother was called as the primary president for the stake, the first stake organized by the church outside of America. And I had a marvelous missionary experience, serving in all kinds of capacities in all parts of the North Mission, and got to know New Zealand inside out, and had wonderful friends, and we had a lot of success. I had people who wanted to be baptized but were frightened to be baptized in the ocean or the rivers, which is where we had to baptize, because we had no chapels. So I would send them up to the college, and my father would baptize them there, where they had a baptismal fund. After our missions in 2.5 years, in the end of July of 1960, we headed home from our mission, but we went the rest of the way around the world. There were 7 of us that would figure this out, my brother Dennis and 5 other fellows and I, and we flew to Australia, and we spent the next 6 months traveling home. We got home at Christmas time, got on a ship in Australia, and then we made several stops, 4 stops in Australia, and then went through Indonesia to Singapore to India. At India, we got off the ship and circled the whole subcontinent of India for a month, virtually living on the train. 4 of us, and the 3 others went on through the Middle East. At the end of a month of seeing almost all of India on the big circle, every night we would sleep on the train, go into the next city, and during the days we'd explore all of the sites. It was a marvelous experience. Got on the next ship that came through, then we went over to the port of Aden in Yemen, then to Egypt through the Red Sea, then we crossed the Mediterranean to Europe, picked up 2 Volkswagens in Italy and drove all through Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Scandinavia, and the British Isles. So by the time we got home, we'd been gone 6 months. Been gone from America for 3 years, and I knelt down on American soil, I kissed the ground and said, "You're the most wonderful country in the world." Then went to Utah State, where we began college. And so my second quarter of college, I was a 21-year-old returned missionary, world, and had 3 years of life experiences. So I was taking classes with 18-year-old freshmen, and here I am, a 21-year-old. And the teachers said to me, "Why are you taking this class? You know so much about this material." And I said, "Well, I have to take it. I'm only a second quarter freshman." And I wanted to know all about it. I really loved it. And so school for me was wonderful from then on. I loved my college the next 4 years at Utah State. Our old friend who had been the president at Snow College when we were there, Dean Cameron. And he was now the dean of students at Utah State. And the first thing he said to us was, "You're going to get the rush from all these great fraternities. They're all going to want you to join. Don't do it." There's a returned missionary fraternity called the Delta Phi Kappa, and you join them. They are terrific guys. Weekly meeting, developed great friends for a lifetime. And each year won the academic scholarship that they gave. So I got one at the end of my freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and at the end of my senior year, I got the one they gave for graduate school. By the end of my freshman year, I wanted to get involved in student government, so I ran for president of the Coordinated Organizations, co-orgs, which coordinated all the clubs on campus, and I was elected president here. I decided to run for student body president. So I had a lot of friends there. I had the support of our Delta Phi Club. So the competition was fierce, but when it came down to it, there was 1 vote difference between the top 3. And so then they had a recount of the ballots, and they found 1 ballot that hadn't been counted, hadn't been marked. So they concluded it hadn't been counted, and it was for me. So they had to have a revote. Well, that caused frustration for the guys who, one of the guys' club at the other fraternity, not at us, but they wrote a big letter in the newspaper, and it got published in the school newspaper, that said there's one group on campus that really takes advantage of things and does everything and gets all these special benefits. Well, it sounded like they were talking about the Delta Phi's. It was really an unfair article, and it didn't ever say who he was after, but it gave everybody the impression that the Delta Phi's had done something wrong, so when they had their re-election, I didn't win. So I was disappointed, but as it turned out, it was a great blessing because I had all the extra time. As a result, I got to be the chairman for homecoming. They chose me to be the homecoming chairman that year. My junior year, I had been up for Man of the Year. They have a great award program each year called the Robbins Awards, and they give awards for different things. And I was one of the finalists, the 4 finalists for the Man of the Year, homecoming chairman. And we had a marvelous homecoming experience, and I chose a special girl who I was a friend with named Claudine Burtonshaw to be the chairman of our homecoming assembly. Mm-hmm. And as part of that assembly, she and I agreed that we ought to have somebody special like the Dean of Students be a part of the assembly. We had him sing on the assembly, which was not a typical thing at a student assembly, but it turned out to be great fun. Achievement of the Year. Well, they awarded the awards at the Robbins Awards that next spring, so it was a nice thing. And I mentioned that I had scholarships all the way through college, so I paid my way through. I didn't ever have to pay a tuition. And one of the events that I got involved in was debate. I hadn't really done debating in high school much, but I did in college. One of my Delta Phi buddies told me that debating was great fun and I had to go try it. Coach Robinson said, well, Mr. Gordon, what do you know about this? And I said, what's the topic? He said, international trade. And I said, oh, well, I probably know something about that. He says, okay, get up and give me 5 minutes on this topic. And I said, well, okay. So I got up and gave a talk, and when I sat down, he said, Mr. Gordon, you don't know a single thing that you're talking about, but you do it beautifully. You're on the team. But I debated a lot, so we went to all the debate meets for the next 3 years and had a wonderful experience going into different schools, had great partners, and one year in McMinnville, Oregon, they had great national competition. And they did some different things that year. They had single one-on-one debates. I won first place in the Lincoln Douglas debate, and my partner and I won second in the overall partner competition. Well, this was interesting. The day I got home from my mission, I went to see my bishop to report in, and one of our old New Zealand missionary friends was coming out of the house. And I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm selling some pots and pans to some girls that live downstairs. I said, pots and pans? Who wants those? And he says, my brother owns this business down in Salt Lake, and I sell for him, and I make a lot of money. I said, you do? He says, yeah. And I says, people want to buy pots and pans? He says, not really. He says, what they buy is all the good things that come with it. You have all this beautiful gleaming stainless steel pots and pans that everybody wants to have when they get married, but nobody dreams about cooking, so they dream about the nice, beautiful things that you do with china and silver. So what they do is they set this high price on the pots and pans and present this to the girls, but they love the idea. So at the end of the presentation, you take the price way, way, way down, and then you kind of get their interest, and then you say, but if you buy it today, here's what else you get. And then you throw out this beautiful black velvet cloth and set out all this beautiful silverware on it and say, this comes with it, same price. Oh, well, that sounds nice. And if you can give me the names of some friends, I'll give you this beautiful set of crystal that goes with it. Whoa. Now, if you want a set of china, that goes with it. Well, I told everybody how wonderful it was, and I was successful. I would sell about 3 out of 4 presentations, and I was making a lot of money, so it was a wonderful career, and I sold that off and on, all through college and even in law school. I'd sell it, so that was great money, and I loved selling. To my debate competition up in McMinnville, Oregon, there they had a salesmanship contest. So I took my pots and pans and entered that contest, and I won the national sales contest. And I'd put the lids on upside down and swing the pan, and that was pretty impressive. And then I would stack them up, and now she's really impressed. And I started doing that presentation. Pretty soon she's laughing and giggling at the things that I'm telling. I recruited a whole group of my fraternity brothers to sell for me. Made a lot of money off of their success by training them and taking them with me. One summer, I took a group of them with me as we went up through Idaho and up into Montana, and I'd challenge them. I took a trailer house, and we'd all stay in the trailer house, we'd pull behind the cars, and I'd say, if all of you can outsell me together, I'll buy you dinner. And I never had to buy them dinner.
I attended 1 year at the College of Eastern Utah while Dad was still president. I loved college there. It was small, and they needed people in every department. So they would say, we sure need someone to march in the drill team. Could you be in our band? We've got a good debate team. Would you like to be on the debate team? And would you like to be in any of the plays we've got going here? And I wanted to do them all, and because I was the oldest in my family, I could do almost anything I wanted according to my parents, who, of course, were part of the school. My mother even taught some classes there, and my father taught classes and was president. Then we went to debates. I just remember, stopping and staying at the Grand Canyon, so we traveled with our debate team a long way. And somebody there thought that Mike and I were married. And I said, oh, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. His name was Orphanakis. So he was a great man and very different from me. And so we pretended like we were, and this was a big wedding party, and everybody was kind of with me, and we thought the whole thing was hilarious. And so I was on the drill team and the band. And one day one night we were playing a football game. I put the drill team uniform under my band uniform, and I played the flute and marched out on the field, and we played the school song and something else, and we marched off, and right at the end of the bleachers I started to take off my uniform. Well, I didn't know I was in view of everybody, and pretty soon I heard, "Cheers! Take it off," and I went, "What?" Oh, I finally got it off and marched on with the drill team. I was so embarrassed. I thought that was such an embarrassing experience. After Jackson Lake Lodge my first year, I came back and my father said, "We're moving again." And I said, "What? I love it here. I have friends now. I've loved college. I like the teachers. This is a wonderful place to be." And he said, "Well, I have the opportunity now to be the dean of students up there at Utah State University. I think that might be a better place, really, to raise our family. There's a few more choices in people to date." I was dating the student body president right then, and he was a Catholic, and he wanted to be a father, in the Catholic Church. I saw him later, and he never was one. Anyway, we get to Utah State, and it was kind of a fun thing to do right off because everybody wanted to go with the Dean of Students' daughter, So I had a few dates and was enjoying going with different ones, and auditioned to be in a melodrama that was being held there, and it was called Lucy the Forsaken. And I was chosen to be Lucy, and I was forsaken. Well, one night it was being shown, Richard was in the audience with a date, and he thought, "I will save her." I enjoyed Utah State, and I joined a sorority, Kappa Delta, and I won International Days Queen because I didn't have to wear a swimming suit. All I did was put on a pretty dress and give a talk about the importance of international relations. Crowned me Queen of International Days because they liked my talk. So I decided to major in speech and drama and English, and this all changed when I was dating this young man by the name of Vic Gordon, and he was a man on campus. He was president of co-orgs, and what that was is all the independent organizations on campus, he was president of them, and he unified them.
Unforgettable.
So here I am, trudging along into school, just really feeling good about my majors and liking my classes and entering competitions in poetry and readings and things like that. One day I walk into to see my dad, who was in the administration building, and I said, "Hi Dad, how are you?" I just thought I'd say hi, and he said, "Listen, the Dean of Women wants to have a little word with you." And I went in there, and she said, "We're having the most preferred man dance this weekend, and the most preferred man doesn't have a date." and she says, "That's going to be a little bit awkward because he was voted most preferred man and nobody's going to go with him. And would you go with him?" And I said, "Okay." I thought, "Oh dear, that's going to be rather weird." So I went with Dick Baker that night, and he was crowned most preferred man, and I just stood off to the side sort of thing. And after that, I started dating quite a bit.
I was in student government going into our junior year, and I was president of the co-org, so I was on the student senate, and we had training up at Jackson, Wyoming. And we went up there, and the president of the school, Gerald Chase, came up and said, "We have a new dean of students who I want to introduce to you," and I introduced to you Claude Burtonshaw. And Claude Burtonshaw stood up and gave about a 15-minute talk. And he talked about the philosophers and all of these wise men, and quoted all of them and said all these brilliant things. And then at the end of his presentation he said, "Well, you might agree with me, but I hope not." And then he sat down. And I said, "Who is this guy? I've got to get to know him." Well, it turned out in my student government role, I worked directly with him. So he was kind of our advisor, so I worked with him well. Well, I liked him so well, I went and signed up for his class, and after one day of class, I ran back and signed up for his other class. He only taught 2. And through the rest of my college career, I took every class that he taught. I thought he was the best thinker I had ever run across in my life. And 2 months into school, in October, I took a date and went to this wonderful play that the school put on. And it was a melodrama called Lucy the Forsaken. And we were sitting there during the play, and out comes this girl in a blue dress with blue flashing eyes, blonde hair, and I was struck. I just couldn't believe what I saw. I thought, who is this girl on campus and I don't know her? And I started looking around for a program to find out what her name was. And nobody had a program. And finally at the break I rushed and got a program. I looked down and her name was Claudine Burtonshaw. And I thought, that's got to be related to Claude Burtonshaw. How come I haven't met her? So the very next morning I rushed into class and said to him, "Hey Dean, have you got a daughter?" "Yes, I have 6. "Oh. Well, do you have one who's an actress?" "Yes, I have 6. "Oh, well, that didn't help." "Well, do you have one named Claudine?" "Oh, yes, that's my oldest daughter." "Well, I'd like to meet her. I saw her in the play last night." "Well, good, yeah, I'll introduce you sometime." "How can I meet her?" "Well, just give me a call." I said, "Okay, fine." So probably that night, very soon, I called him at home.
All I know is that I am getting ready for a date, and it's Friday night, and I'm upstairs, and Dad gets the call.
I said, "Hi, Dean. Is your daughter around?" He says, "Yeah, I think so." I said, I wonder if she has a date for Friday night." He says, "Just a minute."
And he calls up and he says, "Claudine?" I said, "Yeah?" And he says, "Do you have a date next Friday night?" And I said, "Yes."
"Never mind. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dick, she has a date." "Well, what about Saturday?" "What about Saturday, Claudine?"
"Yeah, I do."
"Oh, that's too bad. Well, ask her about Sunday. Here, just a minute. Claudine, come and talk to him yourself."
And so he hands me the phone and I go, "Hello?"
Claudine came and we had a nice talk, and she said, "Have we met?" And I said, "No." And she says, "Have I heard your name somewhere?" I said, "Well, I'm in co-works." And she says, "Oh, so am I."
And he said, I can't remember what he said. He just said, "I was wondering if maybe you'd like to go with me on Sunday." And I said, "Well, I guess that'd be all right." He said, "My fraternity, Delta Phi's, are going to have a concert, and I'd like to support them, and I'd like you to go with me." And I said, "Oh, well, that sounds good. I'd like to do that."
So instead of my Delta Phi choir singing, as I thought when we were, we got through and a couple got up and spoke about the economic problems of Venezuela.
Wow, this is interesting. He's kind of a nice guy, and you know what he did? He held my hand in church. What a funny guy.
Which was really funny. But we had a fun time, and during that week I called her and made another date for the following Saturday for a dance at our Delta Phi.
Which I was surprised because, you know, the Delta Phi choir in the place we went didn't sing. We went to an agriculture report of Peru or somewhere, Anyway, so I go home and I don't think too much of it. And then I see him at a church fireside.
And I went to that with my other date, and there she was with her other date.
And I think, he's really a neat guy. Look at him over there. I was really impressed with him. You could see energy just coming out of him. And I thought, this is very impressive. Because I hadn't found the guy I wanted for sure.
And we saw each other, and it felt a little awkward because we had a date together the next night. So that was the night we went dancing, and we had a marvelous time dancing.
I had never been with anybody who could make me laugh almost all night long. And dance? Oh, he was a dancer. And I thought, that was one of the things I wanted in my husband, was that he was a good dancer. Oh my goodness, he could just trip his little feet all over the floor.
And that just kept us going, and we dated all that year till spring when she left to go to Jackson to work for the summer. So I said to her, Mom, by the way, Mrs. Burnshaw, I'm going up to Jackson soon. Would you like to send anything up to Claudine? She looked stricken. Like, you're not going to go up there and see her up there. This sounds like it could be serious. She's going to be there all summer, away from me where I'm protected. And but I went up and I spent half the summer in Jackson. I'd go sell over in Wyoming or over in Montana or maybe in Idaho, and then I'd come back to Jackson, spend time, because I had two buddies that were cowboys there on the staff. And so I'd stay with them, and she would come out after work, and we would go off into the mountains and have this wonderful summer, a whole summer of romance. So by fall, that was the year that we had the homecoming award, and she was the assembly chairman, and we dated all that fall, and in February we got engaged, and we were married in August 21st of 1964.
Well, the first thing that happened at Utah State is he gave me his pin, his fraternity pin, and that was really cool. If you wore his pin, in fact, he even said that to me, I give this to you because you only give it away to someone you intend to marry. Oh, I was kind of excited about that. And so I wore this pin. And one day we were out playing in the leaves on the front of the administration building, and all the leaves had come down, and there were big piles of leaves. And we were throwing leaves all over each other and rolling in the leaves. And I come up and I don't have my pin. Oh my gosh, I'd lost my pin. Oh, I didn't know what I was going to do. So we go through this pile of leaves looking for it. Never did find that pin. I was so sad. I don't think you got me a new one, did you? Oh, you got me a new pin because we weren't quite ready to be engaged. All right. We were going to a Capadilda formal, and I had a beautiful blue gown someone had made for me that had a lovely kind of train, and it's really a pretty gown. And Richard was all dressed up in his tuxedo, and he came and picked me up. And instead of going to the dance, he took me to the Logan Temple. And we pulled up there, and I said, what are we doing? And he said, I thought we should just have a little talk here by the temple. And I said, really? And he's kind of fiddling with the radio, and he finally finds a radio station he liked, and then he was reaching down by the side of his seat, and he was kind of fiddling around down under there, and I said, what's going on? And he finally brought it up, and he said, I wondered if you would like to marry me because I love you very much. And I said, I love you very much too. And he put a ring on my finger that was a solitaire diamond that was just heavenly. I still wear it. I still wear it today. And it's a gorgeous ring. And I said, I can hardly wait to share it. So we go to the formal, and I go around and say, hi, how's your dance? How's it going today? And I kind of showed it off. During that summer, we were working hard. He selling and me finishing up my education. So I had to take all these elementary education classes. And I just remembered that my mother said, well, okay, if you want to get married, I guess that's a good thing. It was the first child, and she wasn't too excited about it too much, but she liked him a lot, and my family adored him. Each one of the siblings just loved Dick. They said, oh, he is just wonderful. He'd make the girls giggle and laugh, and they'd play games with him every time he'd come to see them. And they all thought he was just charming. And my dad liked him. My dad thought he was one of his brightest students. So I thought, this is a good thing. And so here we are getting ready to be married. And I was planning a wedding, and they asked me to write the road show, and I did that. And I did all this in one summer, and I finished my classes, and I got right to the science class, and I just went crying to the teacher and said, I can't do this test. I had to do this and this and this, and I have to get a wedding gown, and I have to get the refreshments, and I have to have invitations, and I have to have food, and I have to have a trousseau. I have to do it all myself. And I can't learn all these science facts. And he put his arm around me and said, oh, I can see you're overwhelmed. Here, take the test. He said, and learn them. He said, I'll give you an extra day, and you just learn these facts. And I went back, and I got I think a B, but I passed. And so here we are on August 21st, 1964, and we're so excited. Both of us are so ready to be married because we had dated for 2 years. That's a long time. And we had dates kind of like this. Sometimes we were happy, sometimes we weren't. It was kind of like this, up and down. And so during that 2 years, we kind of got prepared. We even took a marriage class together. And we loved that marriage class. And we'd write notes and say, why don't we elope? Wouldn't that be fun? We'd just elope. Oh, we can't do that. All these people want to come to the wedding, and besides, we need to do it right.
Unforgettable.
When we were wed, we married in the Delta Phi fraternity house, just 2 blocks from her home. Then we loaded the things into our car that we owned, which was almost nothing. We had a two-door Chevrolet, a beautiful little 1953 Chevy Bel Air. And we slid into the back seat, her cedar chest, and all of our worldly possessions in the back seat. And on top we put our skis and a dust mop that we got for a wedding gift. And away we went.
And a broom, I think. Yeah.
And a broom.
Yeah.
And we drove across the country to Niagara Falls and then to Washington, D.C., where we lived in Alexandria, Virginia for the next 3 years during our law school experience.
And it was exciting and fun, and I had never been out of Utah and Idaho, well, except Arizona and California for some, trips. But boy, it was exciting to be with him. My mother said something like, maybe you're too young to get married, you're almost 21, but maybe you'd like to wait, and we'll send you to Europe. And I said this to Papa here, and she said I could have a European trip if I'd wait to get married, and he said, I'll take you to Europe. And they both laughed and said, my mom and dad both laughed and said, sure he will. He did.
After my 6 months of travel coming home from my mission, I knew how to travel on a budget. We had only had the money that we would have spent on coming home from our mission. The church would have paid our flight home, which is $550. So believe it or not, we traveled for those 6 months on $550, including our travel. And so I said to Claudine, we'll go to Europe while we're in law school before we have kids. So our first year, we ran out of money partway through our first semester. We were just about out of money, and I called my brother Dennis, who was in medical school at University of Maryland. He was in Baltimore, 40 miles away. And I said, do you have any money? And he said, I've got $40. And I said, can I borrow it? And he said, yes. So we drove up and got it and drove back and lived on that $40 until Claudine started teaching school in January.
We went, phew, now we can buy more than $10 worth of food every week, and that's about all we spent was $10 or $12 a week for food.
It's amazing how you can get
And
by.
our apartment was, I remember, $90.
$94 a month for an apartment all through law school.
And our big outings was going to the Marriott and getting a ice cream or something.
Once a week we'd get an ice cream cone. We thought a dime was precious.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So first year she taught over across the river in Maryland, and she had her own, which grade? First or third?
Second.
Second grade. And I worked for the White House. After law school, I'd rush off and I worked for the White House that first year. And the second year she taught school, the same school all 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that year I got a job working for the Senator Wallace Bennett. My friend Tim Healy had that job before. Tim had been a student at Utah State who I'd known well, was student body president up there, and we moved right next door to him back in Washington, back in Alexandria. And when he finished law school, then he went in the military, and that's when I took the job at the Senator's office and worked there for 2 years. And after our second year, we saved all the money that I earned working in the Senate, and we lived on the money she earned teaching school. And that summer we went for 3 months to Europe and traveled all through Western Europe. We bought a car. My dad bought a little Opel Kadett in Germany, and we drove all through Western Europe, visited 27 countries, and we went through Western Europe, across the Mediterranean to Egypt, to Cyprus, and then over to the Middle East, through Syria and Jordan and Israel, and back to Greece, where we'd left our car, and then we drove all through Eastern Europe, through all of the communist countries, and then back into Western Europe, up through Scandinavia, and eventually through the British Isles.
Oh, it was exciting. We had 4 of us traveling, and when you have to live so close, we lived in student hostels. We took the book Europe on $5 a day, and we lived on $5 a day, eating lots of bread and cheese. And we made kind of a little sleeping bag sheet that we could wash, sewed it up, so that we could just slide into any bed that was available. Sometimes we even had to sleep all together, 4 of us. It was really a student experience. We lived in student hostels and got to meet all the students that were traveling. And we loved it, and it was exciting, and I just remember thinking, I could go home anytime and be happy. You know, as we headed across the Atlantic, I thought, I never thought we'd do this. A little girl from Idaho, a spud picking little girl, because I used to pick spuds, you know, to earn some money to buy clothes for school. And I thought,
Now you're visiting Paris.
And now I'm crossing over and landing in London. It was just so exciting, I could hardly stand it. And
So we got back after her school had already started. She'd missed the first week of school, teaching in the fall.
Yep.
And that third year, halfway through the year, we were applying for jobs. And I'd send out some resumes, hoping to get a job. And we came home for Christmas. And there was a big family photo up in Logan that Claudine's family was going to have. And I went to this interview with a federal judge who told me he would like to see me. And when I got there to the interview, he says, Mr. Gordon, why would you be so presumptuous as to put on your resume that your hobbies are photography and poetry? Why do you think anybody would care about that? And I thought, I don't know. It may have just been good luck, but obviously you care. You wouldn't be bringing it up. It turns out those were two of his passions. And he sat me down and interviewed me for an hour. And I thought, gee, this is going a lot better than I thought. And he says, oh, I've got to go back on the bench. Would you wait for me another hour? I'd like to talk to you further. And I said, of course. And he went back on the bench, and I ran out and called Claudia and said, the family photograph will just have to go ahead without me. I daren't leave. I think I'm going to get this job. And I did. So I'm not in the photograph.
Just so few law students ever get to work for a federal judge, you know. And this was an amazing opportunity and an honor for Papa.
And then, at Christmas, there we were in Logan, and Claudine says, let's go for a drive. And we drive over by the temple and tell them what you did.
Where we got engaged, and I had this little gift for him. And I gave it to him, and he unwrapped it. And it was a little blue toy of a little boy, a rubber toy, like a teething toy, a little doll. And I said, this is your Christmas present. And he said, are we going to have a baby? And I said, yes, we're going to have a little boy, I'm sure. He would get picked up in Alexandria by a law student, and they would drive into law school, and I would head across the bridge into Maryland and teach for all day, and then I'd get ready for the next day, and then I'd drive across another bridge to George Washington Law School, or later the Capitol or the White House. He worked both those places. And together we'd drive back to Alexandria, so it's just like this. I drove that every day, and I loved it. It was fun, and I met two of my dearest friends that are still friends with me, and we'd always go to lunch, and there would be a Mormon, and a Jew, and a Black Lady Baptist. We all became dear friends, and we still write each other.
And my experience working for the senator was so wonderful because every day I would go over to the Capitol for him and do whatever kinds of errands he had. So I got to go all through the Capitol, learn everything about it, go to the Library of Congress, learn everything about it, go to the Supreme Court, listen to the arguments, and go back to the Senate. It was a dream job for a law student. So after 3 years, we moved back to Utah. She was pregnant, so she had to fly home. She couldn't drive that far because she was due in another month, 2 months.
Yep.
And I drove out with our worldly possessions in the back seat of the car. And we moved into Salt Lake, and that's where we began living. And we lived there, and I took the bar in July, the end of July. And every hour I'd run out and call her and say, are you okay? Okay, have you had the baby? And she went 2 weeks over. So he wasn't born until the middle of August, 7th of August.
And he was a big baby. He was about 8.5 pounds. And now they don't even let you go over like that. But we lived up on Foothill Drive and had just a little place with a little bedroom and brought that little boy home. I just remember all I did was play with that little boy all day long, and sometimes I would get out of my jammies and he'd come home and say, what did you do all day? And I go, I don't know. I had a wonderful time.
We clerked for the judge for 1 year in the federal court. Then I took a job with a law firm up in Brigham City where I'd grown up, a famous firm up there. And we lived up there for 1.5 years, and Jana was born there. And then we went back to Salt Lake where Kessler, so it was Kessler and Gordon. And before very long we brought in Orrin Hatch, so it was Kessler, Hatch, and Gordon. And Orrin later became a U.S. Senator and was the longest serving U.S. Senator in Republican history. And then we brought in more guys, and pretty soon we were 5 of us, and that got to be a little burdensome. And then when we got to 15, I said, I don't want to be part of such a big firm, so I left. And I started doing venturing, all kinds of entrepreneurial work. Started a playground company and a toy sales company, real estate. I developed condominiums and apartments and subdivisions in Hawaii and subdivision in Brigham City, and we bought old warehouses and converted them into self-storage, and another great big warehouse that I've converted into office building and then into condominiums. So for the next 30 years or 40 years, we just did every kind of business there was around Salt Lake.
So we lived up in Brigham City at first, and he practiced up there in Brigham City, and we were living right close to Grandma and Grandpa, Papa Sam and Grandma June, and they loved having us there. We had Jeff and Jana there, and when I became pregnant with Scott just about 9 months, 10 months later, we thought, wow, is this what you want to do, is do divorce and all these other...
Which you would have to do in a small town, we decided.
You have to do
which
everything.
I didn't want to do.
You know, he didn't want to do that so much. They'd wake us up at midnight asking questions about their divorce. So anyway, we moved back to Salt Lake City and had Scott down here in Salt Lake. We lived on Ida Circle, and that's where
Bought a home one night, not knowing anything about it, and we said to the people, anybody with young kids live around there? And they says, right next door there's a young couple.
I was going to say that. Okay, and they were good friends of ours at Utah State by the name of Joan and Wayne Peterson, and we loved being in this cul-de-sac, and there we raised our little children, because after Scott, about 2-3 years later, came Julianne, and then Marilee 2 years later, and then 4 years later, oh, that was when we went up to Park Terrace Drive. We had Greg up there. But we had these 6 wonderful children. They were all beautiful children, beautiful babies, beautiful children. We loved having our family, and they all fit into the entrepreneurship of Richard, because they were the ones who played on the playground that was being developed. They were the ones who loved the toys we'd bring home from the toy fairs. I even became a toy seller for his party plan. And
Over the years, I think I've added up 47 different entities that I created. So we really had a big variety of experiences. One of the things that was wonderful was we took our kids on big trips. So I would take them on great adventure trips, and Nana would take them on cultural experience trips.
Jeff and Marilee to the Hilcomore pageant. Jeff played young Joseph that found the plates in the hill, and they had the spotlight on him. Marilee became a Lamanite dancer and loved that. And it was a spiritual experience, because we'd go out into the congregation and give them a missionary experience. Julie and went to the Shakespeare Festival, and we were there, was it over a week?
Probably a week.
Yeah. Anyway, we went Shakespeare camp, and she learned all about Shakespeare. We went backstage and got to understand who Shakespeare was. Greg and I went over there to London, and we went to, honey, I know what I did. Gosh, that's the trouble, Sebrin. Anyway, okay, Greg and I went to London and met some of Jeff's contacts that he had met, that he had taught on his mission. And they picked us up and took us around different parts of England and went up to York, where Jeff was a missionary. And then we crossed the channel and went to Holland and got to see Anka again, which was our first time to see her in her own surroundings, and got to see baby Emma. And Scott, he instead was an exchange student to Brazil, and so he felt like that was his trip.
The adventure trips, Jeff and I went down to South America, did all the western half of South America. Jan and I went through North Africa and Eastern Europe and Europe. Scott and I went to Africa. And Julie and I went through New Guinea and Indonesia and up into Singapore and Malaysia. And Marilyn and I went through China and Mongolia and over to Hong Kong. And then Greg took me down through Central America, primarily through Mexico and Guatemala and
Book of Mormon country.
yeah. So we had marvelous experiences along the way. We did lots of family vacations. So the kids are all big travelers, and their families are all travelers. And Brindley, who's photographing us here, is a big traveler. She's seen most of the world already.
What our children learn from all these experiences is that there's good people everywhere you go, and honest people, and people who probably hunger for the gospel, you know, and sometimes we could share it along the way. And most exciting for us, of course, was when we went to New Zealand on our mission after raising kids. That was wonderful, and that was a big trip for me because that was hard to live with somebody 24/7, and you do everything together. And
You do that here.
yeah, and we learned how to do it on our mission, and I thought that was a good thing.
And we've been home for 5 years, and
Has it been fun?
we were getting ready to go on another mission to England when we moved here, and the 2 weeks here, we'd been here, they changed the bishopric, and I was called to the bishopric. So we haven't gone on another mission, but
So
we would like to.
he's still in the bishopric. I'm still a primary teacher and compassionate service leader, and we still take care of funerals and people who have operations and things.
2.5 years ago, we sold our home up on Mount Olympus, and after selling that, we didn't know where to go, so we went to St. George for a winter and came back here, lived downtown in our loft for 6 months, and then we found this nice condo out in Holiday where we live now, and we have for the last 2.5 years, and we love it here. We're close to almost all of our kids and grandkids. A half hour, we can see any of them. So life is really good. We love it here.
And we get to see our grandchildren, and they are the very best part. We have 22. 22.
No.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
22 grandkids. And we have
3.5, no, 4.5.
greats.
4.5 greats.
Uh-huh. And that's the highlight of our lives, I think. Ricky was born 4 years ago in October, and I thought this ought to be the alpha male, and he should be the alpha male, and together they would get along fine. And our daughter Marilee helped birth from Luna 5 beautiful little puppies. And Ricky was #1. Just like me, I'm #1 in my family.
He's #1 in everything.
He thinks that the world revolves around him, though. You know, he leads out when we walk. Do you want to tell a little bit more about him?
Well, Ricky was a little a little ball of fur, and he was chocolate brown. And when we went down to choose our favorite, he was our immediate favorite. He was so energetic and enthusiastic about everything, and we said, oh, we would love to have a puppy. We'd just been home from our mission for a few months, and so we got first choice. But then Marilee kept telling us that someone else wanted him, and pretty soon we thought we weren't going to get him at all. But on Christmas Eve, they came up and presented him with a big bow around his neck as our Christmas gift. We were so delighted, and he's been our close buddy ever since for 4 years.
Yes.
Almost.
And we have this beautiful Brindley that's our photographer here, and our videographer. Yeah. And we're grateful that she's doing this, and we are happy to be together.
And we hope she'll
for
come
this
back
long.
and do this again for us in 20 years when we finish up the rest of our story.
You got it.
Yeah, that's good. But I probably should tell you that we have 6 perfect kids and 22 beautiful, perfect grandchildren. And you won't believe how cute the greats are. It's so
Our
fun.
best wishes to whoever watches this. We love you all.
But most of all, we dedicate this, what we're saying, that we love the Lord and we love being able to serve Him. And we feel that He is such a part of our lives. And we have each of our children come for Sunday school every Sunday. Different ones every Sunday, and feed them dinner.
With the coronavirus, that's why we're doing it here, not in church.
Yep. And the virus has stopped much of what we wanted to do with everybody, but we're
So
still hopeful.
A special thank you to Bryn for putting this together for us. We hope this turns out to be something memorable for all of us.
Yes. Amen.
It's been a happy story with a happy ending.
Yes. Just like we planned, huh?
So unforgettable. Thinks that I am unforgettable.